My entitled family thought they won until karma hit hard. 4 years, my family pretended to be a loving unit, a tightly knit group navigating the world together. On social media and at holiday gatherings, we were the picture of success and mutual support. But that picture was a carefully constructed fiction, a facade built with my money and painted over with my silent sacrifices. All the while they smiled for the cameras, they were secretly drawing up plans to bleed me completely dry, to take everything I had and leave me with nothing but the bill. They celebrated their victory far too early, never once imagining that the foundation they were standing on was me, and that I was about to walk away. This is the story of how their gilded world came crashing down, not with a sudden dramatic bang, but with the slow, inevitable and crushing weight of their own insatiable greed. On the outside, we looked picture perfect. A hardworking dad, a loving mom and 3 kids. But behind closed doors that family portrait was a mirage. I'm 29 now, but this story really begins almost a decade ago, right after I graduated from college. I landed a great job in software development and I was thrilled. I thought my salary was a ticket to my own future, a chance to build a life. I had no idea my family saw it as their personal retirement fund. I became, for all intents and purposes, the family ATM. It started so innocently. It always does, doesn't it? The first time my mom called in a quiet panic. The property tax bill was due and they were a few $100s short. Just until your father's next check, she promised, her voice laced with a mother's gentle guilt. Of course I sent the money. The relief and gratitude in her voice were intoxicating. I felt like a hero, the responsible son saving the day. A few weeks later it was a utility bill. Then my dad needed new tires for his car so he could keep looking for work. Each time I was showered with praise. What would we do without you? They'd say. That praise became a currency of its own, a drug I didn't know I was getting addicted to. Here and there, slowly but surely became the norm. The requests grew bolder. My parents, both healthy and perfectly capable of working, just stopped. They slid into a comfortable, cozy semi-retirement, entirely funded by me. My dad's job searches became a running joke. He'd spend an hour on the computer and then declare the market was just too tough for a man his age. My salary was no longer my own. It was a river that flowed directly into their bank account, covering their mortgage, their escalating grocery bills, their car payments, and their ever-expanding taste for the finer things in life. One month it was a top-of-the-line espresso machine. The next, my mom decided she needed a whole new wardrobe from her favorite department store. I once came home to find a massive new smart TV mounted on the wall. When I asked my dad about it, he just clapped me on the shoulder and said, "We deserve a little comfort, son. You work so hard for us." Thus was clear. I wasn't part of it. I was the engine that made it run. My brother, Marcus, 2 years my junior, saw the example our parents set and followed it with religious devotion. He was content to drift in a dead-end part-time retail job, showing zero ambition to do anything more. Why would he? He lived at home rent-free, and anytime he was short on cash for a night out or a new video game, he knew who to call. "Just pick up the slack," my dad would say with a wink, as if it were my designated role. When I tried to talk to Marcus about his future, he'd just laugh. "Why kill myself working a 9-to-5 grind like you?" he'd ask. "You've got everything under control. I'm just enjoying the ride." But the real star of our parasitic galaxy was my younger sister, Lucy. The golden child. The family's delicate, creative genius who could do no wrong. While I was given constant lectures about family duty and financial responsibility, Lucy was praised for her free spirit. This was just a family-approved euphemism for her complete inability to hold down a job for more than a few months. My money was the fuel for her endless, fleeting passions. One month I was funding an expensive photography course. I bought the high-end camera, the lenses, the editing software, over $5,000 in total. She went to 3 classes, decided the instructor was uninspired, and the camera found a permanent home in the back of her closet. The next, it was a jewelry-making business. I paid for silver, gemstones, and specialized tools. She made 3 bracelets, sold one to our aunt for $20, and declared the market too saturated. Each failed venture was met with supportive murmurs from our parents. "She just needs to find her true calling," my mom would say. "You can't rush an artist." They loved playing the part of a proud family, telling friends and relatives how incredibly successful and generous their oldest son was. But in private, when they thought I wasn't listening, the truth would slip out. I'd overhear them in the kitchen, my mom telling my dad, "He's so boring, isn't he? All he does is work. He has no spontaneity." My dad would chuckle and reply, "Let him be boring. His predictability pays the bills." They didn't see my discipline as a virtue. They saw it as a resource, a utility to be exploited. They didn't see me, their son. They saw a walking, talking bank account. And they were getting ready to make one final massive withdrawal that would drain the account for good. The day the facade finally shattered for me was a Sunday afternoon, one of those deceptively peaceful days in late summer. My parents called a family meeting, something usually reserved for announcing vacation plans I would be expected to pay for. They sat me down at the dining room table, a plate of store-bought cookies between us. They were beaming, smiling at me with an unnerving mixture of pride and pity, like they'd just won the lottery and were about to bestow a great honor upon me. "Son," my father began, leaning forward with conspiratorial excitement, "your mother and I have made a big decision. We're officially retiring." He said it with such finality as if it were a royal decree. They then launched into their brilliant plan. They were going to sell the family home, the house I grew up in, the only significant asset our family possessed. I felt a knot form in my stomach. I assumed they'd use the equity to fund their retirement. I was naive. "And here's the best part," my mother chirped, clapping her hands together. "We're going to give all the money from the sale to Lucy." My sister, sitting beside them, preened. Apparently, she needed a significant capital investment for her latest, most groundbreaking business idea yet. A line of high-end, artisanal, eco-friendly, chakra-lined candles. She claimed it was going to be the next big thing in wellness. A cold dread washed over me as the next piece of their puzzle slid into place. "So where will you live?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Oh, we've already found the most wonderful place," my dad boomed, pulling a real estate brochure from a folder. It was a beautiful, sprawling rental home in a gated community much closer to the city, with a golf course and a community pool. The rent was nearly double my own monthly mortgage payment. My role in this master plan was horrifyingly simple. I was expected to sign the lease and pay the rent, and their utilities, and their groceries, and their club fees, indefinitely. I was to finance their luxurious retirement and my sister's six-figure hobby, while being completely written out of the only real asset our family had ever built, an asset my income had maintained for the better part of a decade. They didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. They looked triumphant. For years I had swallowed my frustration. I had bitten my tongue and opened my wallet to keep the peace, to maintain the illusion of the happy family. But in that moment, hearing them lay out the plan for my complete and total financial ruin, something inside me didn't just snap. It disintegrated. It was the sheer, unadulterated entitlement. It was the gleeful tone in their voices. They weren't asking for my help. They were informing me of my obligations. They were declaring with smiles on their faces that they owned my future. I let them finish their grand, self-congratulatory speech. I listened to my mother talk about how this was for the best, how family sticks together, and how proud they were of Lucy for finally taking initiative. I waited for a pause, the moment they were all looking at me, expecting me to nod and ask where to sign. I took a slow breath and said the two words they had never ever heard from me before. "No. I'm not doing that." The silence that followed was deafening. It was like a bomb had gone off and the sound hadn't caught up yet. My mother's smile froze and then melted away. Lucy's smug expression curdled into disbelief. My father's face, a moment ago so jovial, began to turn a dangerous shade of purple. He was the first to explode. "What did you just say?" he roared, slamming his hand on the table. My mother burst into theatrical tears, wailing about how she had failed as a mother to have raised such a selfish, ungrateful son. "After everything we've given you," she sobbed. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. Lucy just scoffed, crossing her arms. "Wow. A traitor to your own family. I knew you'd show your true colors eventually. You're just jealous of my ambition." Marcus, as usual, just stared at the floor, wanting to be anywhere else. The argument was pointless. Their minds were made up. They weren't trying to convince me, they were trying to command me. They stormed out of my house, spitting insults and threats. They were utterly, completely confident that I'd crumble. That I'd come crawling back in a day or two, wallet in hand, begging for forgiveness. They were already celebrating. They thought they had won. What they didn't understand was that by saying no, I was the one who had finally won my freedom. The weeks that followed were a relentless storm of emotional blackmail. My phone became a weapon used against me. My voicemail filled up with messages that swung wildly between volcanic rage and pathetic tear-soaked guilt trips. My father left messages detailing exactly how I had failed as a son, calling me a disgrace. My mother would call, sobbing, recounting all the sacrifices she made for me as a child, ending each call with, "I don't know how you can sleep at night." Lucy sent a barrage of texts, calling me every name in the book and telling me I was dead to her. Marcus just sent one text, "You really messed up this time." I ignored every single one. I blocked their numbers. I created a filter to send their emails directly to a folder I never opened. Then I did something I hadn't done in 10 years. I made a decision entirely for myself. I packed up my life, put my house on the market and moved into a smaller, more manageable apartment on the other side of town. It was a fortress of solitude. For the first time in my adult life, when my paycheck hit my bank account, it was actually my own. The silence in my new apartment was jarring at first. It was the absence of constant need, of endless demands. And after a few days I realized it wasn't silence. It was peace. While they were busy torching the bridges behind them, I was methodically building my own. You know, that little side hustle they always mocked me for? That small software project I tinkered with in the few spare hours I had late at night? Well, without the constant drain on my finances and my mental energy, it had started to get serious. I reinvested my own money, the money that would have been paying for their golf club fees, back into my project. I hired a small team of freelance developers. I polished the user interface. I went all in on myself for the first time ever. Meanwhile, I'd get occasional cautious updates from my Aunt Carol, my mom's sister and the only member of my extended family who saw the dynamic for what it was. She was my scout on the inside. She told me they'd sold the house in record time. Just as they'd planned, they handed Lucy a cashier's check for nearly $500,000. They threw a massive new beginnings party at a fancy restaurant. My aunt said they made toast after toast to cutting out negativity, to new chapters, and to Lucy's guaranteed success as a future suit. They had won. They were rich, free, and didn't need their ungrateful son anymore. But my aunt ended the call with a worried tone. "They're burning through that money at a shocking speed," she warned. "Your dad got a new convertible. Your mom is redecorating the entire rental house. And Lucy's business seems to involve a lot of five-star dinners with potential investors and not a lot of actual candle making." The whole charade came to its spectacular, glorious end at my aunt's annual Christmas Eve party. It was the one family event I never missed. This year I almost skipped it, but Aunt Carol insisted I come. "You have nothing to be ashamed of," she told me over the phone. "Hold your head high and let them see you thriving." So I went. I walked into a scene of pure, undiluted smugness. My parents and Lucy were holding court in the center of the living room, decked out in expensive new clothes. They were laughing too loudly, showing off photos of their new home and making loud, pointed comments for my benefit. "It's just amazing how much your life improves when you're not held back by unsupportive people," my mother announced to a group of cousins staring right at me. I just smiled, got a drink, and talked to my other relatives, ignoring the performance. Then, about an hour into the party, Aunt Carol, a woman who never raises her voice and doesn't waste a single word, calmly walked over to the group. She waited for a lull in my father's boasting. "Jim," she said, her voice clear and cutting right through the party chatter. "It's so wonderful to see you all doing so well. Which is why I was so confused when you called me last week asking to borrow $5,000. You could have heard a pin drop. It was a perfect record scratch moment. Every conversation stopped. Every eye in the room swiveled to my father. His face went through a rapid theatrical series of transformations, from smug satisfaction to wide-eyed panic and finally to pure, sputtering fury. He started screaming, pointing a shaking finger at my aunt, calling her a liar and a troublemaker. He accused me of poisoning her mind against them. It was a full-blown public meltdown. My mother started crying, not her usual manipulative tears, but harsh, ugly sobs of humiliation. They grabbed their coats, spitting insults at anyone who dared to make eye contact, and stormed out of the party, dragging a shell-shocked Lucy and a ghostly white Marcus behind them. The perfect family mask hadn't just cracked. It had been publicly shattered into a million pieces. That was just the first domino. In the weeks that followed, their world imploded. As my aunt had predicted, the house money was gone. Utterly and completely vanished. Lucy's artisanal candle company had produced nothing but a mountain of credit card receipts for designer clothes, spa treatments and lavish trips, all filed under research and development. The eviction notice for their fancy rental arrived right on schedule. And now, with their reputation in tatters and every bridge with the extended family burned to ash, they had absolutely nowhere to go. The first message I received in the aftermath wasn't a call, but an email. It was from Marcus. It was a long, rambling, desperate, and frankly pathetic tirade. With nowhere else to go, my parents had been forced to move into the two-bedroom apartment he shared with Lucy. It was, he wrote, a living hell. Our parents refused to even look for work, insisting they were retired, and that it was their children's duty to care for them. They demanded the same expensive lifestyle they had grown accustomed to, guilting him and Lucy for every dollar spent on rent or groceries. His life savings were gone. He was drowning in debt they were racking up under his roof. And of course in the end he blamed me. "This is all your fault," the email concluded. "If you hadn't been so selfish and abandoned us, none of this would be happening. You did this to us." I deleted the email without replying. A month later my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. It was Lucy. She was sobbing uncontrollably, her voice choked and hysterical. Through the torrent of tears and gasps she admitted everything. The plan was always to live off me forever. The candle business was a complete sham from the start. She even confessed that our dad had been secretly draining his own retirement accounts for months before they even sold the house, funneling her money to fund her lifestyle, which is why they were so desperate for me to take over their expenses. Now their landlord was kicking all four of them out of the apartment. She begged me, pleaded with me to co-sign a new lease for them, to give them some money to get back on their feet. And then she said the words that made the entire situation poetically, tragically perfect. "They're so lazy," she cried, talking about our parents. "They just sit on the couch all day and expect us to take care of everything." The breathtaking irony was completely, utterly lost on her that it's truly amazing how fast a foundation built on greed can turn to dust. They were so certain they had won the war that they never bothered to build a lifeboat. Their victory party was held on the deck of a sinking ship. So, I have to ask you, have any of you ever been the designated responsible one in a family that only knew how to take? What was the moment you finally said, no? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Did I listen to Lucy's frantic, tearful pleas? And for the first time in my entire life, when faced with their manufactured crises, I felt nothing. No anger, no resentment, no pity. Just a profound and unshakable quiet. The emotional hold they'd had on me for decades was finally broken. "No, Lucy," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I'm not going to help." I explained as simply and dispassionately as I could, that these were the natural consequences of their own actions. "You all made a series of choices," I told her. "You chose to stop working. You chose to sell the house. You chose to spend $500,000 on nothing. You chose to lay out a plan that would have ruined me. These are your consequences to live with, not mine. I am not a bank and I am no longer your safety net." The call ended, and with it my last tie to their self-inflicted chaos. The family as I knew it simply imploded. My parents were forced to move into a tiny, run-down, government-subsidized apartment in a bad part of town, the reality of their golden years, a far cry from the golf course community they'd envisioned. Marcus and Lucy, now deep in debt and legally and morally trapped into caring for two able-bodied but resolutely unemployed parents, were miserable. Their resentment for our parents grew daily, but it was matched only by their burning resentment for me, the one who got away. After the Christmas Eve disaster, the rest of the extended family wanted nothing to do with them, leaving them completely isolated on an island of their own making. Me. My company took off. The success they had mocked became my reality. The boring work I did day after day built me a life of stability and peace they could only dream of. I eventually sold the software to a larger tech firm for an amount that would have made their heads spin, but they'll never know. I live a quiet, stable life that I built for myself on my own terms. I didn't plan their downfall. I never orchestrated some grand, vengeful scheme. I just stepped aside. I stopped holding them up and I let them run headfirst into the wall they had built themselves. They thought they had won by cutting me out, but all they really did was sever their one and only lifeline. The best revenge I've learned isn't loud and explosive. It's the quiet, profound satisfaction of living well and letting karma handle the rest. If you watch this story this far, hit that subscribe button, share, like, and drop your comment. Remember to tell us where you are watching from.